In an exclusive interview with the Daily Express, author Nigel Cn stated that he believes the Duke of York may eventually be forced to live in exile abroad due to public hostility, stripping Prince Andrew of his chancellor role as King Charles' sugoi approaches. Many have their eyes on the state chancellor of state position since the king's illness. The royal writer said he supports the outcome of a UK opinion poll last week in which an overwhelming 69% of respondents, or nearly 7 out of 10, said they want to see Andrew removed from the line of succession to the throne. Mr. Sin said the mere fact we are even talking about such an extreme measure shows just how low Andrew has sunk in public esteem. The British people have had enough and most now simply want him gone. Mr. CTH declared he has passed the point of no return and now faces AV. The late Queen removed the Prince, who will turn 64 next month, from his charitable patronages, military positions, and the right to use his HR title in public in January 2022, more than 2 years after he gave a famous interview on BBC News about his connection with convicted paedophile Epstein. Her Majesty took action 1 month prior to attorneys for Andrew, who has consistently and adamantly denied any misconduct, reaching a $12 million out-of-court settlement with Virginia J.E., the alleged Epstein sex slave. This month's big U.S. document leak of court documents pertaining to the late financier Epstein, in which Andrew's name appears more than 100 times, has rekindled the scandal. Mr. Kern, who discussed the prince's inner struggle in his best-selling book Prince Andrew Epstein Maxwell and the Palace in 2020 and brought up the topic once more in his most recent work, War of the Windsor, last year, stated he is certain that this issue will never, ever be resolved. The FBI is under pressure from 2 U.S. lawyers on behalf of over a dozen victims of Epstein to turn over piles of evidence gathered by agents from his residences in New York and his Caribbean island. The public's opinion of Andrew might have changed if he had handled things differently in Miami and New Mexico, such as consenting to an FBI interview at his preferred location and assisting the authorities who are still looking into Epstein. Meanwhile, the prince is reportedly preparing for a confrontation with his brother King Charles, who wants to move him out of his opulent 10-bedroom royal lodge estate in Windsor and into a smaller house. Mr. CTH stated that he is destined for a solitary life that is well hidden from public view. It is possible that he will eventually find a more tranquil bolt hole abroad, possibly in Switzerland or France. He may require financial assistance to accomplish this, but he still has a small group of wealthy friends and may be able to call on family for support. Whichever route he takes, there is no turning back to the life he once led due to a strange twist of fate. If the Duke does seek refuge abroad, he will be following in the footsteps of his own grandfather and noble Prince Andrew of Greece and Denmark, who was banished for life from Greece in 1922 for defying a military order during an attempted coup. Despite a brief return to his native country, Prince Andrew was banished for life from Greece in 1922. While his son, the late Prince Philip, fought for Britain during World War II, Andrew lived in modest flats, hotel rooms, and on a boat with his lover, Ctis Andrade, for the bulk of his remaining years. He had not seen any members of his family, including Prince Philip, for the preceding 5 years until he passed away from a heart attack in December 1944 at the age of 62 at the Metropole Hotel in Monte Carlo, leaving a debt trail in his wake. Andrew was removed as Chancellor due to King Charles's condescending demeanour. In an exclusive interview with the Daily Express, author Nigel Cn expressed his belief that public hatred might finally push the Duke of York out of Britain and compel him to live in exile overseas. Mr. Sin said he had reached his breaking point and will spend the rest of his life as a recluse, rejected by practically everyone, even his own family. The royal writer said that he agrees with the findings of a UK survey conducted last week, which showed that nearly 7 out of 10 British respondents, or 69% of the total, stated they wanted Andrew to be taken out of the line of succession. The only way this could be done would be by a parliamentary act, but Mr. CTH remarked that the very fact that we are discussing such a drastic option indicates how little the public still thinks of Andrew. The majority of British people now just want him gone because they've had enough. The late Queen removed the Prince, who will turn 64 this month, from his charitable patronages, military ranks, and the right to use his Her Royal Highness title in public in January 2022. This was more than 2 years after the prince made headlines on BBC News for his relationship with convicted paedophile Epstein. Her Majesty took action 1 month prior to attorneys for Andrew, who has consistently and adamantly denied any wrongdoing, agreeing to an out-of-court settlement with the claimed sex slave from Epstein of $12 million. Jeffrey in Virginia. This month's big U.S. document leak of court documents pertaining to the late financier Epstein, in which Andrew's name occurs over 100 times, has rekindled the story. Mr. CTH, who revealed the prince's predicament behind closed doors in his best-selling book from 2020 In the Castle, Prince Andrew Epstein Maxwell, stated he is aware that this issue will never, ever go away. He touched on this topic once more in his most recent book, War of the Windsor, published last year. The FBI is under pressure from 2 U.S. lawyers who are representing over a dozen victims of Epstein to turn over mounds of evidence that investigators gathered from his residences in New York and his Caribbean island. Miami and New Mexico had Andrew handled things differently, such as agreeing to be interviewed by the FBI at a venue of his choice and cooperating with authorities still investigating Epstein. Then perhaps the public's perception of him would be different. At the same time, the prince is said to be bracing for a battle royal on his own doorstep with his brother King Charles, who wants to move him out of his palatial 10-bedroom royal LOD stayed in Windsor and into a smaller home. Mr. CTH said his destined for a lonely existence well out of public view, and it may be that he eventually finds a more peaceful bolt hole abroad, perhaps in Switzerland or France. He might need help to do this financially, but he still has a small circle of wealthy friends, as well as possibly being able to call on family for assistance. Whichever path he chooses, there's no way back to the life he once had. In a quirk of fate, if the Duke does seek haven abroad, he will be following in the historical footsteps of his own grandfather and namesake Prince Andrew of Greece and Denmark, who was banished for life from Greece in 1922 for disobeying a military command during an attempted coup, though he was allowed to briefly return to his homeland while his son, the late Prince Philip, fought for Britain during World War II. Andrew lived in hotel rooms, tiny flats, and on a boat with his lover, Ctis Andrade, for the majority of his remaining years. He left a debt-ridden legacy and had not seen any members of his family, including Prince Philip, for the preceding 5 years, when he passed away at the age of 62 from a heart attack in December 1944 at the Metropole Hotel in Monte Carlo.